All right, we are back now with tier 4 of our Dynasty quarterback rankings for 2023. If you've listened in, if you're listening to this overall video, this is going to sound redundant, but each one of these has been broken out into individual videos here. So if you haven't yet, go check out tier 1, 2, and 3. We got some interesting names up there. Tier 4 is where things really start to, go into those names that are just names to keep on top of your mind. There's the potential that none of these guys get any draft capital. Two of these guys might even recommit to college. They haven't committed to the draft yet. So these are just names that are good to keep in your mind as we move forward here, and just to kind of familiarize yourself with them. I think there's a couple guys here that could be fantasy sneaky type of guys, but it's going to really kind of depend on their draft capital a lot. We talked about it just with the tier 3 group, if you haven't seen that video, but we talked about the different tiers. Tier 1 was the safest regardless of landing spot and draft capital. Tier 2, landing spot was a little bit more important, but we think that they're going to get high draft capital. Tier 3 is the ones where landing spot really matters, and then Tier 4 is where it's critical. Draft capital and landing spot. If these guys go somewhere where all these guys in this tier are probably going to be backups to start their NFL careers, but just like Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, a lot of these guys went later on, got an immediate opportunity, and were able to show out. So there's always that next guy. One of these guys might be it, and we're going to talk through them right here. So you ready to get into tier 4 here, Dale?
Absolutely.
All right, so tier 4, number one guy I've got here is going to be Cameron Ward. He plays for Washington State. He is someone who has not committed yet to the NFL draft, 6'2", 220 pounds. And he played his first 2 years. So I was trying to find stats on this guy, and I had to actually go to ESPN to find him. But he played his first couple of seasons in the FCS? Is that what it was, Dale?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And the FCS, so if you're unfamiliar, because I don't know college very well at all, and there's like 8 million conferences and everything. But FCS is actually where Trey Lance came from, that conference in college. And funnily enough, Cameron Ward is someone who's kind of built like Trey Lance, 6'2", 220 pounds. Did his best work. He was very mobile through his time in college. Through his 3 seasons as the starter, 220 rushing attempts, on the ground. And, college stats, have no idea what his actual yardage is, probably somewhere in the couple hundreds there. But, it's crazy because it says he had 222 rushing attempts, 121 yards. So that's pretty bad, but 8 touchdowns. So he had to have been averaging at least 1 per, just to get those touchdowns. And it's funny, he had a long of 45 in this last season, but whatever. College stats are stupid. But no, the funny thing is, he absolutely went nuclear in the FCS. He was so dang good in the FCS. And then he goes to Washington State this year. I guess all the coaches that drafted him and, really believed in him, set up the game plan around him to set the record. He broke his school's record for touchdowns in 2 seasons just because he was that good. They all left the program, so he transferred out of the school, entered the transfer portal, and went to Washington State. So his stats, if you look at them, are really impressive. So I'm not going to break it down by year. I'm going to just do career here. 1,390 attempts. That is an astronomical number of passing attempts for a college player. His sophomore year, he had 590 passing attempts in 10 games. That is insane. That is just so many passing attempts there. This last year, 497. So to say that this guy is comfortable throwing the ball would be an understatement, right? 10,000 yards in college is incredible. 64% completion percentage and 94 touchdowns, 23 interceptions through 3 seasons. He had 47 in his sophomore year, the same year that he had 590 attempts there. So he is someone that is very interesting to me, feels very good. And when I say he is a Trey Lance type of prospect, that's who he reminds me of, man. He just looks like him. He's built like him a little bit, and he's got a great arm. And he's just someone that, again, I really like to see what he can do. If he does commit to the NFL, it's still undeclared at this time, but do you have any thoughts on Cameron Ward as we're moving through here?
Yeah, he's very raw in the sense that like he hasn't really been a D1 starter for that many games.
Yep.
It's only 1 year. And the competition compared to the Pac-12 to the FCS school vastly
Mm-hmm.
vastly different. And I feel at Washington State he played pretty well. He very willing passer. I think he's going to be someone to watch for. I honestly think he should stay another year just to kind of refine his skills a little bit. Um, because like his yards per completion were a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's only 6.5, which that's not. I mean that's not bad, but I mean it's
Pretty
compared to the
low.
other
Pretty
quarterbacks.
low.
Yeah, it's pretty low. I didn't really watch him. So,
Right.
to be
What are
very
you
honest,
are you kidding me, man? This is the pinnacle of college football.
so I haven't watched a lot of tape on him, but I will say that he's going to be someone to look out for. I can see him being I mean, if he does go in the draft, I can see him being like an early day 3 guy,
Mm-hmm.
like around the Stinson Bennett draft range because of his potential.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes because ultimately the reason why I have him down here in tier 4 is I think that he will ultimately recommit to college
Mhm.
for one more year just to get a little bit more on tape there. Because of his great 2 seasons in the FCS, I think that he just needs to put one more year together with Washington State here and kind of show what he can do. Um, there's a lot of positives to his game, but again, there is just not enough there to kind of fully evaluate it because of the competition level in the FCS, like you're talking about there. So, I think we'll see what he does. Ultimately, if he commits to the NFL draft, for me, he's probably going to jump up to tier number 3. But I'm kind of hedging here because I don't think he'll ultimately be there. But I think for 2024, if he does go back to school, he's definitely a name to watch. There's already quite a few names in the 2024 draft class for quarterbacks that are really interesting. You got Caleb Williams with USC, Quinnen Ewers with Texas.
Texas.
Um,
Yep.
Drake May, I think, is another guy
Yep.
for the 2024 draft class. So it's going to be a pretty good quarterback class next year. But Cameron Ward, if he goes back, he might be able to solidify himself as one of those top 5 guys, kind of like Will Levis or Hendon Hooker for me, in that draft class. But yeah, I like this guy. I like what he has the potential for. But again, we just kind of need to see a little bit more of what he can do, I think, from a college perspective. So I think he's going to recommit, but you never know. Definitely this time of year, take nothing for granted.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't think he's ready yet. And like with all these other quarterbacks that have already been declaring for the draft, like he's one that hasn't yet. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe the date to declare, I think, is here in a I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. So like he has a couple weeks to decide, but I really think he's going.
Yeah, I feel like if he was going to commit, he probably would have done it by now.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
probably why. But yeah, just a name to kind of keep in mind. Again, with these early rankings, if he does commit, he will definitely jump up a tier for me. I like him more than Will Levis and Stetson Bennett, to be honest with you. I would prefer this guy over both of them, but I don't think he'll get the draft capital in this year's draft class.
Yeah.
And that's the only downside for Cameron Ward. But good player for sure. Definitely a good player. Keep your eye on Cameron Ward moving forward. All right, the next guy I want to talk about here is another guy I don't think that he's going to commit, right? I think he has one more year of college eligibility. Am I right here? Bo
I believe
Nix.
so. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so Bo
that he
Nix
does.
is the quarterback currently for Oregon. And again, if he recommits, that quarterback class in 2024 is going to be ridiculous. I like this guy quite a bit. Again, he's got the prototypical size of a quarterback. He's 6'3", 214 pounds. He's a big dude. Plays for Oregon, was with Auburn for 3 years. So he's got 4 years of starters experience. And again, just like Cameron Ward, this is just how crazy Cameron Ward was. We just read his stats off, but through 4 years, Bo Nix has 1,400 completion or 1,400 attempts, 63% completion percentage, and almost the same number of yards as Cameron Ward. A lot less touchdowns than Ward, and it's just really impressive. That just goes to show how good Cameron Ward was, and I get it. It was the FCS, but he was killing it over there. So just something to keep in mind when we're talking about Ward. But Bennett is a guy, Bo Nix, you got me thinking about Stetson Bennett now. Bo Nix is somebody who is kind of interesting. And, he was with Auburn, like I said, for 3 years. Wasn't the best. His completion percentage did continuously get better, 58%, 60, 61%. Not that great, though, with Auburn. He goes over to Oregon. It's the Pac-12, so it's a downgrade in terms of conference, but really saw his usage get a lot better over in Oregon. 409 attempts this last year, 72% completion percentage. His yards per attempt jumped up by about 2 yards per attempt. His yardage went up to 3,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Really had himself a great year this year. And that's why I think he's ultimately going to go back to play for one more year, just to build on this year and kind of show this is the standard that we can expect from this guy. Just because Auburn was not great, right? It was just not a good time at Auburn. And then he goes to Oregon and he's killing it over there. So any thoughts on Bennett, or you got me saying
Bo
Bennett now,
Nix.
on Bo
Bo
Nix
Nix.
here.
Yes. Yeah. It's so with Bo Nix, I do like him. I've kind of followed his career a bit, and like him going into Auburn in 2019, like he was seen as their savior a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and he never really lived up to the hype. I do feel he's a good improviser, and he's a very smart quarterback, but I feel he did struggle against a more typical NFL style defenses compared to in the Pac-12, where it's just run and gun and just hope and pray somebody
Yeah.
stops somebody.
Yep.
So but, I
72%
feel
completion percentage, though, is pretty impressive. Even if,
it is very, very good. It is very good. I feel he played a lot better. I think he had more confidence,
mm-hmm.
and then I also think he had better athletes. Actually better athletes to throw to.
Yep.
It's compared to at Auburn, where like some of their like coaching hasn't been as good, so they haven't recruited as well. And honestly, like that plays a big part in a quarterback's trajectory in college and how they do with how the school is recruiting other players and their coaching staff too.
Mm-hmm.
Also with the Oregon, like I feel they played a more tempo offense compared to Auburn is. I mean, I wouldn't say it's traditionally like a run offense, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel they're probably a little bit more run heavy than at Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, 323 passing attempts in his last year with Auburn, just not great there. They just did not rely on him very much over in
Right.
Auburn. So the other positive for Bo Nix here is the usage on the ground as a mobile quarterback. And again, rushing stats are stupid, but he had 89 attempts this last year with Oregon for 510 yards. And you take into account he's going to have some sacks in there. So his 89 attempts for probably somewhere around like 700 maybe yards is pretty good. That is quite impressive on the ground. He had 14 rushing touchdowns this last year. So quite impressive there. He even had a receiving touchdown. Pretty funny there. But he was someone that definitely improved his game in Oregon, which is why we both think that he's going to go back here in 2023. But just again, a name to keep an eye on. If you're looking, if he does commit to 2023 in the NFL draft, he's someone that would jump up again. I'd prefer him over both guys in tier 3 right now, Bennett and Levis. I'd probably still prefer Cameron Ward over him, which is why we talked about him first here tonight. But, I think that he's someone that is worth keeping an eye on. But same as Ward, I think he would have committed by now if he was going to. So that's kind of why I think he's going back ultimately.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I really do like Bo Nix, and I feel he's gonna be. I feel he's gonna fit from another year in a system that gonna reward his strengths.
Yep, I agree with that 100%. So, yeah, it's going to be, dude, 2024 is going to be crazy. You've got so
It's
many
gonna be
guys. Those
loaded.
guys I already mentioned.
Yes.
You got probably Cameron Ward, Bo Nix. You got DJ Ugale,
Yep.
whatever the hell
Yeah,
his name
him.
is. Like, it's going to be a loaded draft class next year. And I
I
know
agree.
that's the one thing. I was listening to a podcast earlier, and they were talking about, his 2023 draft already a bust because it's lost so much hype the last couple of weeks and everything. And it's pretty funny just thinking about it. Like 2024 has got so much potential to it already, and everyone was so blinded by 2023 that it might not matter. But yeah, it's crazy. So Bo Nix, good player. We'll see what he ultimately does. So he might drop off this list. And honestly, we're getting to the point where, outside of those top 6 guys, these are the only 2 that are really interesting. The last 2 we're going to touch on pretty quickly, but just a couple guys that are a little more interesting here. The next guy is going to be Tanner McKee. This guy I just want to mention because I think he is committed to this year's draft class already.
He is.
Okay.
He is.
And he's worth mentioning just because of the measurables. Will Levis, he has all the the Josh Allen you could want. This dude is 6'6", 230 pounds. He is a giant out there. He's just a huge human being. Quarterback for Stanford. Stanford hasn't created a good quarterback since who? Andrew Luck? Is that the last one?
Davis Mills, come on, man.
Oh, yeah, great. He's got a neck like Davis Mills, so maybe that's what they're kind
I
of
know he does.
genetically
It's very
creating these guys in a lab. Stats-wise, though, not the most impressive. He is a junior. He's got 2 years of playtime. His sophomore year, 315 attempts, 65% completion, 2,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. This last year, this is kind of concerning a little bit to me. Big increase in passing attempts, 426. Dip in completion percentage, which you kind of expect there. The more, if you pass it more, you're going to get more of a realistic completion percentage. So, 62% is probably more accurate to where he's at right now. 2,900 yards, 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. So the touchdowns actually went down, though, with a big increase in attempts, which is a little concerning there. But on the ground in the rushing department, he did have 74 attempts this year for negative 90 yards. So I don't actually know what it is, but,
on that, it's a big thing that I see is that he was sacked almost twice the amount of what he was this year to last year, which the Stanford offense was atrocious,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been very bad his 2 years that he started.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a lot to do with his stats.
Yeah.
And them just not having the athletes around him at least look serviceable.
Yeah, that's the one thing with Stanford is, sometimes they create some great players, but they're so rare. It's hard to kind of predict there. But I think the fact that he had 135 attempts, though, we were talking about C.J. Stroud. I think he had like 75 through 3 years. So it's just he's willing to get out there, and with his size and his ability, if he tests well, he's someone that could be kind of sneaky. Ultimately, this guy feels like someone who's going to convert to tight end here in a couple years, probably. But he's just someone worth keeping your eye on. Again, I don't really love him. The offense hasn't been good. He's not been elite, but Stanford hasn't been a great bastion of talent for the last couple of years. So there is that little caveat to it. But he is worth keeping an eye on again. If he ultimately sneaks into like the 4th, 5th round, I wouldn't be too surprised. He's going to be a backup for sure, but with those stats, he could always be like the Davis Mills route, find himself into a starter role for as kind of a what can we do with this guy. But we'll see what he can do there. Any thoughts on McKee before we move on to the last guy?
No, I do agree with all what you said. I think I think he's going to be. I feel he's going to be better than what you have. I
Maybe.
would rather have I would rather have him and his potential over a guy like Stinson. They keep bringing up
Draft capital is going to come down big on that one, though. Like I said, I think Bennett could.
It is. I mean, I honestly feel these two players are going to have similar draft cap. My opinion.
Right. And that we'll see. We ultimately we'll see, it again, not to hammer it too much, but if Bennett does sneak into the first, which honestly, I'm telling you, man, he's going to jump just because of the winning. Like people overvalue winning.
That's not always true because
not everyone does, but bad teams do. bad players do.
I agree. I agree. But back in like 2006, when like Troy Smith won his Heisman, and he was a really good player for Ohio State. Like he went in the 6th round.
It's possible, but Bennett's been good. Bennett's been serviceable. So we won't derail this with talking about Bennett too much. But I think that if these guys had similar draft capital, I agree with you 100%. I'd rather have McKee there. Let's say they're both 3rd round picks. I would rather have McKee. I think Bennett's going to go higher than that, and that's kind of why I have him ranked above. But, similar draft capital, that's out the window. I don't love Stetson Bennett that much. I just think that teams are going to value him higher than you and I do, right? So that's just the caveat there. But, no, I'm with you. I would rather have McKee as well. He's 6'6". He's more Josh Allen than Bennett is. Absolutely. For sure. So
absolutely.
No, so McKee is definitely someone to keep an eye on as we move forward here. And again, the final tiers, he probably, I have a feeling that we're probably going to still have 4 tiers when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
And Bennett might end up staying where he's at, and Levis falls down, or there's going to be some movement here for sure. But McKee is definitely someone to keep an eye on as we move forward. Who realistically is probably going to be like McKee's going to be like is that big guy. When we went to the combine a few years ago, I forget his name, but the giant guy, he ultimately did end up converting to tight end. I forget what his name was, Jackson something.
It was Tyrese Jackson.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. So, he that's who he kind of reminds me of a little bit here. Just all the measurable talent in the world, but couldn't cut it as a quarterback. But we'll see. Right. He's going to Stanford, so he's probably pretty smart, hopefully.
Probably.
Who knows? All right. So last guy here, and we are going to wrap it up with this guy. Last guy in the top 10 rankings here, quarterback number 10. Neither Dale and I like this guy. If you've ever seen anything on this player, you would know seems like kind of an asshole, to be honest with you. But
absolutely,
Spencer Rattler is the guy that we're going to be talking about here. And Spencer Rattler, 6'1", 200 pounds. He's not a big guy. He's not the smallest guy. He could definitely put on some weight. He's got a frame for it, But he's someone that is very polarizing. And I will say, I was kind of expecting him to go back to college for one more year. Because he did improve his draft stock a little bit, I feel like, this last year in South Carolina. So played for Oklahoma for 3 years. He had 3 games played, 11, and then he got benched in 2021. Only played 9 games in that season. Ironically, in 2021, his averages were out of this world, like his actual stats in 2021 when he got benched were actually pretty good. I didn't watch that season, but
ironically, he was benched for Caleb Williams.
Oh, that's fair then. Yeah, he's really good. So I get it. I get it. Yeah, that dude's going to be, if you can place a future bet And now we're in Ohio, so we have sports betting now. That's great.
Yeah, we do.
If you want to make a bet that Caleb Williams is the number 1 overall pick in 2024, yeah, you're probably going to make some money on that. A futures bet there.
Probably.
But no, Spencer Rattler played 3 years with Oklahoma, got benched for Caleb Williams, transferred to South Carolina, and he actually played pretty well this year. And, you know, as much as I dislike the personality of Spencer Rattler, I don't think he's really a great personality to be around. You know, 350 attempts, 67% completion percentage, 2,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Not great there. But then he ultimately decided to commit to the NFL draft. And, you know, it's a little surprising. If you go back to 2020, his sophomore year with Oklahoma, that was his best season by far. 317 attempts, 68% completion percentage, 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and then, you know, it fell off a cliff the next couple years there. He's someone who is not afraid to kind of get out on the run as well. He uses his mobility pretty well. Through his time in college, he has 12 rushing touchdowns. He has about 193 rushing attempts, so he's not afraid to kind of get out there and move it. But yeah, he's someone that is he's hard to evaluate for me. So maybe you can speak on him a little bit more than me, because like I said, everything I've ever seen about this guy is he seems like kind of an ass, and he doesn't really, he puts a lot of blame on his teammates, and
I agree. Yeah, no, and I've been seeing that too. You know, I feel he's a very, very low character guy. I think a lot of people like him, and I feel he wore out his welcome in Oklahoma. You know, I mean, it was a big thing with him last year, was that he was having a bad game against Texas, and then Caleb Williams came in and played excellent, and then they ended up winning that game. So, you know, and then after that game, he was really upset about that and thought he should have been a starter. And you know, I just don't think that there was so much hype with him coming in. I think he was, I think he was like a top 5 player in his class. I mean, I you know, in his class, you know, he quarterback coming out, supposed to be the next thing after Kyler Murray, and get a guy who everybody and thinks he's the next coming of, you know, of like Steve Young or whatever, you know. And you know, I just don't think he can read a defense very well. You know, I think he tries to play with his legs too much, and I kind of view him as like a Zach Wilson. He had one good year, and it was against Big 12 competition, you know, and he still kind of stunk it up sometimes in Big 12 competition. So I don't like him very much. I mean, I think he's gonna get on an NFL roster because of his intangibles. I do feel he's very gifted, but that only gets you so far.
He's got a great arm. But yeah, I think that the biggest thing for Spencer Rattler here is, you know, we talked about it, the last couple years, not been great. But you go back to his 2020 season, his best season, you know, first season as a full starter that year, played 11 games, and I already read the stats to you earlier. But it was a good season for him, for sure, that year. And, you know, that's what a lot of teams, and you know, we're looking at it, the draft, and we expect everyone to be capable and everything, but they are not not every team is the most logical. They don't think things through the best, right? Well, there's guys that are going to look at that 2020 season and say, I mean, but he did it, you know, he has that potential. Maybe we can get it out of him. And that's the only reason why he's worth mentioning here. Ultimately, he has the potential to go as like a top 4th round or better pick. I don't think he will, because again, I don't think a lot of people really kind of like him. But again, I have heard a lot of good things from him out of South Carolina this year, that he really kind of revamped his image. You know, he didn't go crying to the media after everything. So maybe teams are going to look at it and say he's kind of gotten a little bit better, look at 2020 and think that they can get that out of him again if they give him a little bit of time to, you know, let's say let's, for example, just throw a hypothetical out there. Let's say the Lions take him in the 3rd round to sit behind Jared Goff for the next couple of years. You know, it's worth stashing at that point in your rookie league. So he's somebody that's worth just keeping an eye on.
Mm,
Ultimately, I don't think he's going to have a super high draft capital. Like I said, I think he'll
no,
be a third, fourth round, probably fourth round pick. Someone that's just willing to take a chance on him at that point. But just stashing at the end of the second, maybe third round wouldn't be too bad in a super flex. So he might ultimately, because of his name value, go higher than that. But yeah, that's about the limit of where I would probably take him in my rookie drafts, unless he gets a massive like second round investment from a team.
I agree, and I don't foresee that happening. I hope he goes to the combine because I think that's going to help him out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know it's trendy these days to kind of skip the combine and do your own pro days.
Yeah.
But that's what Zach Wilson did. I'm pretty sure, and
I don't think they had a
I kind of
combine Zach Wilson's year, if I remember right, because of the COVID.
I believe he skipped out on the combine. I think he did. He might have skipped out on the combine and just did his pro day. Like that's
Mm.
what a lot of quarterbacks have been
Yeah, we'll
lately.
see. We will see.
And
So I think I
I
agree
mean,
with you. If he goes to the combine, it would definitely benefit him for sure.
yeah, it's going to help. I feel he has the talent. It's just what he does with his talent. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he has any dog in him or anything like that. Like, it's going into 21 season. Like he was the betting favorite to be the number one pick, to be the
Yeah,
Heisman Trophy winner.
crazy.
And then,
And then gets
you know,
benched.
yeah, yeah. And,
Yep.
and then he's benched and he's benched and embarrassed at Oklahoma. And he runs away to South Carolina where they aren't going to cover him,
Mm-hmm.
so, I don't trust that. I don't like that. Don't like Spencer Rattler. And then the wrap up, my Spencer Rattler talk. Like I would rather have Stetson Bennett than Spencer
Oh
Rattler.
my.
I would any day,
I was
any
just gonna
day.
ask you actually. Let's say they're both third round
Yeah,
picks. Would you rather have Bennett?
I would rather. I
I
mean,
think
as
Bennett's
like
safer.
my team, like on my team, I'd rather have Stetson Bennett. For fantasy, I'd rather have Rattler
Probably, yeah.
because of his potential.
But yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I think that the floor with Bennett would probably be higher, but the ceiling with Rattler definitely is there. He's got a lot of
Yeah,
potential, but he's pretty raw there. So
yes,
from a personality standpoint. So
yes.
all right. So just to recap real quick, this is the last ranking of the quarterbacks. We're going to be getting into the more fun positions here. Running backs
Yeah.
next week. I'm more excited about those guys. Oh my goodness, those guys are going to be fun. My rankings on the running backs, I already finished those, and they're going to be interesting. And then we're going to be following up with the wide receivers and finally finishing up with the tight ends after that. That one would probably take one player per episode just because, there's not that many. So just to fill in that week. But no,
Right.
we'll get to the tight ends here in a couple weeks. But no, hopefully you guys all, congratulations on any championships you guys might have won this week. With your leagues, but yeah, we're rocking and rolling for 2023, getting through these guys, and then we're gonna be rolling hard into the off season, try and get a couple mock drafts and stuff here in the next couple weeks, couple months. And yeah, we're going to be hitting this off season pretty hard. So thank you guys for joining. Recap real quick. Tier number 1 for me. And again, these are all my rankings. Dale did not give his. We can probably get his later on in the off season, but my pre rankings are CJ Stroud number 1, Anthony Richardson number 2. Those guys in a tier of their own. Hendon Hooker at 3, Bryce Young at 4. Those guys in tier number 2. Stenson Bennett and Will Levis in tier 3. Cameron Ward, Bo Nix, Tanner McKee, and Spencer Rattler in tier number 4. So thank you guys for joining me. Let me know over on Twitter what you guys think about these rankings, who I'm right on, who I'm wrong on. I'm sure everyone's going to be coming for my head for Bryce Young, but, go listen to that breakdown and why the short man, the little midget, why I'm not willing to risk everything on him for fantasy football. But, let me know who you're right or who you agree with, who you disagree with. You can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, Dale on Twitter at Dynasty_Dale. Drop a comment, leave a subscription, like whatever you can, anywhere you're listening to the podcast. It just helps out with the algorithm. If there's anything else, let us know. Thank you guys so much for joining us for these quarterback rankings. Have a good night.